Cavalier faithful, welcome back to the Cleveland Pulse, Cavs encapsulated episode whatever. So I'm in my room right now, my office. I have AC people working on, so if you hear some problems with the microphone or some echo or anything of that nature, I apologize ahead of time. But it is Jeffrey. I'm Logan. Justin is unavailable for tonight, but we believe you will enjoy our special guest today. Honestly, Jeffrey, he kind of comes at a perfect time when we could use a voice of reason to say. A Cavs insider, journalist, and a man who is in the locker room around these Cavalier players. Oh, and my former roommate at Ohio University. It's Ethan Sands. Ethan, thanks for coming on. And please, for our audience, do introduce yourself properly and a little bit more about what you do. Maybe even some news that we heard today in the Cleveland front.
For sure. What up, Logan and Jeffrey, first off, and everybody that's listening. How are you guys doing? I'm Ethan, as Logan mentioned. Thank you again for having me, Logan. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. And as Logan said, we went to the same university together. He didn't mention where. That is the Ohio University. I graduated from the EW Scripps School of Journalism in 2021, along with Logan. And I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. I've done a lot of different work around the industry.
Ravens fan.
And hey, man, I gotta be careful when I talk about that in Cleveland. But yeah, and it's been a fun ride so far. It's gonna get even more interesting in March, and it doesn't get more interesting than this when Donovan Mitchell, the team star, goes out for the first couple games after the All-Star break and then comes back and says, okay, I have to go get an injection. Let me get these words right because I want to be as professional as possible. So Donovan Mitchell received a platelet-rich plasma injection today at the Cleveland Clinic Sports Medicine Center to treat a left knee bone bruise that sidelined him for the Cavaliers' previous 2 games, and Mitchell will now be out for the next 3 games before being reevaluated over the weekend and an update as appropriate.
God. I kind of just laugh at this point, Jeffrey. That's the kind of season it's been.
Absolutely. I mean, the injuries keep piling up. Probably the worst timing, I think, was this one. I mean, you're kind of jockeying for position here as far as the second seed, the third seed. Obviously, the fourth seed is going to be in play as well with some 3 pretty good teams coming up here, especially Boston and Minnesota. Once again, Ethan, welcome on in. Appreciate you joining the Cavs Encapsulated crew. But let's get into the bulk of what we're going to be talking about today. I know it's going to be harped upon. It's going to be on your social medias. It's going to be on your YouTube subscription box. But we're going to have to contribute to it because last night, and I will deem it the worst loss of the season in my opinion. I know Logan has very strong feelings. I want to hear from him. I hope he rants, and I hope he really does kind of go off. And then we're going to throw it over to Ethan after that for kind of the inside backstage pass as far as what the locker room was like after that contest. But Logan, if you need me to pull up tweets, I got them ready. Just let me know.
Folks, there's a reason we do a weekly show. It's so we can take the week for what it is, right? Last week, we're talking about Max Strus's 57-foot game winner. We're good and ready and good and happy and everything as well. And then a week later, we feel like this. And we're coming off a loss that, I'll just put it in simple terms, is inexcusable, to say the least. I want to talk first before we get into the nitty-gritty of the game. And I warned Ethan before he came on that we're probably going to be mostly negative today. Sorry for anybody listening in. That's why we do a weekly show, because we kind of switch around depending on what happens that week. So I want to talk about the fan reaction to the game. Twitter, toxic Twitter, X, whatever the hell you want to call it. The days of the Cavs are fun because they're on the rise is gone, toast, finished, okay? As fans, we should strive for the Cavs to be fun because they're winning and winning big games. That's just not, it's not just rising to the occasion. It's blowing expectations out of the water. I expected to beat the Knicks last night. Jalen Brunson goes down. I'm assured the Cavaliers will beat the Knicks last night, and they don't. And this is what I'm going to say. Losses can no longer be excused by, they play so hard. It just wasn't their night. As fans, own the losses. Take your blinders off and admit that this team has shortcomings. And that's okay. They can have shortcomings. But let's not sit here and say things like, well, you can't do much about that. What really bothers me is the openly mocking of other Cavalier fans who are negative about their team not playing up to snuff. I think that's unprofessional BS. Like someone tweets that X, Y, and Z struggled today, or JB Bickerstaff didn't coach a great game. And they're met with shots, things like you don't know ball, or X, Y, and Z. Here's a stupid graphic of how they've played the last 10 games, meaning absolutely nothing to me. I'm talking about this game only. Or George Niang, right? Last night, airballs a three, fouls a guy on a 3-point shot. And I see a tweet that's like, oh guys, look, he did the thing. He's on the ground, he's on his back, and his legs are in the air. Isn't that so funny? And I'm just so sick of that. Until our fan base wants to be serious about this team and really accept where we're at, what we need to work on, because this is what I'll say. The Cavaliers are a good team. The Cavaliers could surprise a lot of people this year. I totally believe that. But as of this moment, today, in the present time, the Cavaliers are no more than a first or second round exit. That can change, but along with the attitude of the team, I think the fan base has to start really figuring out there is some problems with this team, whether it's a little bit of coaching issues. I've been very nice to JB for the last couple of months. I thought he's done a fantastic job. Last night, he was supremely outcoached. But before I ramble too long, because I have about 5 more points on my notes here that I'll get into as the show goes on, I do want to go to Ethan to get kind of the rough idea of what was the locker room like last night, and what are your thoughts on it at all?
I mean, Logan, I think you did a really good job of making the points necessary. Like when you look at the locker room yesterday, it was as it always is after a loss, very quiet. The one thing that I did notice that stood out to me the most is one of the players that is generally always available after post games, whether win or loss, usually was not there yesterday for availability, and it was Jared Allen. And Jared Allen is one of the players that I feel is sticking out like a sore thumb. Let's put it that way in those kind of matchups. And I wrote an article about it today talking about how Evan Mobley and Jared Allen had mismatches, quite honestly, in the paint against the Knicks, who also still had a 7-footer in the paint for them as their center position, but they also had a 6'9" power forward. And knowing that the Cavs set up their rotations, to set up their schemes all around Jared Allen and Evan Mobley being successful in the painted area and being the twin towers and being able to invoke their presence on any defense, on any offense, and whatever that may be, it didn't feel like they did that to me yesterday. And I think the biggest thing is Josh Hart had 19 rebounds. Evan Mobley and Jared Allen combined for 20 rebounds.
Yeah, that pisses me off.
Yeah.
No, I mean, for Josh Hart, but that pisses me off.
I mean, Josh Hart's 6'6".
Yeah.
Which is what they list him as on ESPN.
Right. On a good day.
Yeah. And then you have Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, and I don't care what ESPN lists them at. They're 7 foot. So you need to and JB Bickerstaff said it multiple times. Sometimes it comes down to strength. Sometimes it comes down to just toughness. And to me, they didn't show that yesterday.
Honestly, I think you guys have like an all-encompassing perspective just based on both of your points. And I'm going to finish that up with back to what Logan said, the expectations. Incorporated with the box score. Like Jared Allen, I understand he's on a pretty discounted deal, I would say, for $20 million for what he brings to the table, both sides. That's fine, no worries. Evan Mobley, you're a lottery pick. You're going to be offered a max contract. You aspire to be a defensive player of the year. He's been playing good. I understand that. Last night, kind of unacceptable with Josh Hart. Logan, back to your expectations getting blown out of the water. How about just meeting expectations as far as salary and job role? Darius Garland last night. Was he, are we blaming the loss on Darius Garland? I don't think so in any sense of the word. But you're a max point guard on a team that's the second seed in the East, and your primary ball handler is not playing, and you go for 19-5-4. Miles McBride comes off the bench for New York and goes for 16-5-1. And I get he played 47 minutes to only Darius Garland's 40. I get he played an additional 7 minutes. But you're getting outworked and you're giving up an equivalent amount of work to Miles McBride. No disrespect to the guy, but honestly, kind of just some ridiculous storylines last night. I think everything was kind of touched upon there. But to parlay it kind of into our next segment, which I know Logan set up the tweets for this episode. Absolutely love it. This is from Mikey McNuggets over at the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. And I'm glad we have Ethan on to kind of break this down as well. But I'm going to go to Logan first. JB Bickerstaff, we let our guard down after Brunson went out in the first quarter. Other guys stepped up in these opportunities and it bit us in our ass. Before you go, Logan, I have been pounding the table all year as far as transparency from the coaching staff, from the front office, from the injuries. Why did he decide this was the grand moment to be like, yep, we let our guard down? Don't say that. Literally, just don't say that. Say, just deflect that question. I know Ethan and Chris, the guys at Cleveland.com are asking the tough questions, but just deflect to that question. Logan, what are your thoughts on this?
Last night, Jay Bickerstaff was out coached by Tom Thibodeau again. Tom Thibodeau is a legendary coach, don't get me wrong, but there is just like things I think anybody with two eyeballs could have figured out. Like George Niang probably shouldn't have seen the floor in the second half. And if he had to, he definitely didn't need to see 6 straight minutes where he's doing absolutely nothing. But he makes it all the much worse by doing this. And Ethan, I promise you, we're usually a little bit nicer than this. It's just
we're sorry, Ethan. This is our most negative podcast of the season.
Yeah. This is a really frustrating loss.
Perfect time then, huh?
Welcome to the Cleveland Bulls. To me, this was a masterclass in disastrous coaching. It just was. And when JB comes around and says something like this, I need answers to this answer because they're the ones who should be scrambling. They just lost their top guy. They're playing with 8 available bodies. The good teams, the good coaches, they see red, baby. You know what I'm saying? They see, okay, this team is down. Let's go knock them out early. Let's get out by 10 points. Make them call that first time out. You should have never been in a position where a Josh Hart desperation corner 3 puts you out of that game. You just shouldn't have been. They should have been depleted. They should have been down. And credit to the Knicks for not getting down. But doesn't mean I can't take a little bit of exception with what the Cavaliers did here. This Knicks team didn't have Mitchell Robinson, didn't have Julius Randle. Those are the 2 guys that bullied Evan Mobley and Jared Allen last night. They got bullied by Precious Achiuwa, Josh Hart, Isaiah Hartenstein, and good for them. But I'm sitting here and I'm like, they can answer the bell in this game. They know they can beat you. They're not scared of you. And you basically just gave me an answer where you said you were basically scared to take the moment, right? At the end of the day, the moment was too big. A lot happened. Yeah, whenever a big-time name goes down, either way, both teams are a little bit shaken up from that. But Knicks had a severe disadvantage last night, and the Cavaliers didn't take advantage of that disadvantage.
Absolutely. Ethan, what do you make of that quote? I don't see all the storylines. I don't see every single quote post game. Like I'm sure you probably have a better pulse on that action. So I'm just curious to what you have to say.
So I think you're gonna get even more mad when I tell you who else had a similar statement. So obviously when JB's the first person we talk to after every game. So he goes and says this, and now everybody's going to the locker room and asking the guys like, was Jalen Brunson's injury kind of a set off, kind of like a shocking moment, like kind of like you get shaken back. And Evan Mobley was also like, yeah, it kind of like shook us a little bit. We didn't know what to do a little bit. And I was like, Evan, you like in my head, because I didn't say this out loud. I didn't have the opportunity to because there's like 20 of us in there at a time. But like Logan said, Mitchell Robinson and Julius Randle are the bullies of the New York Knicks. And to think that they were down 3 starters and then lose their best player, and there is no who's going to step up. There is no, let me take the reins. There is no, all right, this is our game. It was more so the New York Knicks saying, let me show you a little bit of this Miami Heat culture that everybody's talking about. Let me show you about this little gritty attitude that we have that says next man up mentality. The same mentality that the Cleveland Cavaliers have been preaching all season long with the amount of injuries that they've been going through. Sure, you don't have Donovan Mitchell, who is your best player, your energy guy, and the guy that is setting everything up. But he's actively talking to everybody on the sideline when he's on the bench. He's pulling Darius Garland to the side during fouls. He's pulling Craig Porter Jr. to the side during fouls and talking to them and discussing. But the guy that really stood out for the Cavs last night is the guy that we've been struggling to find minutes for, Sam Merrill. And I know I go back and forth with Chris on this.
Don't get me started.
Wine and Gold Talk podcast for Cleveland.com. Go ahead and check that out.
Check that out, everybody.
Sam Merrill had 21 points. And I wanted to point out this stat really quickly. The Cavs registered a 119.6 offensive rating in the 29 minutes that Sam Merrill played against the Knicks on Sunday. They had an 81.6 offensive rating in the 19 minutes he wasn't on the court. Do you realize how terrible that is?
And he's not on the court for the last 5 minutes when the game is there to steal. Even as bad as we've played, we could have stole it.
Oh, you're going to love this stat. You're going to love this stat. I knew you were going to mention that. So the Cavs played 16 minutes last night against the Knicks with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley on the court at the same time.
Saw this.
They had the final, and they were in the game for the final minutes of the fourth quarter. The team had a 92.9 offensive rating in those 16 minutes. That's pretty much equivalent to like the Detroit Pistons and the Washington Wizards.
Yeah.
And I don't know if your fans know this. Those teams are not good and are definitely not going to be where the Cavs want to be. So it's you look at the statement that was made by JB that this thing is gonna bite you in the behind. Like, I think there needs to be more accountability, more like you have to call your guys out at some point for not being accountable and doing what was necessary. Like Josh Hart knew what he needed to do. The man went and got a triple-double.
Right.
And you didn't have, you had one, I think, if I remember correctly, Sam Merrill is the only player that scored 20 points for the Cavs. And Josh Hart didn't score 20 points, but he influenced the game in all of the other facets. And the Knicks still had two other guys go for 20. So where is the offensive production with Donovan Mitchell off the court that everybody's been talking about all year? You say, oh, Darius Garland to get more opportunities, more shots because Donovan Mitchell's not on the court. Where are you?
15 shots. That ain't going to do it.
And a lot of people say that 15 shots is enough to get it done. And it's not like he wasn't making shots.
Oh, yeah.
My thing is, if you're making them, why stop? Why, like, what's going on? What's going through your head that making you think that you can't continue to lock in and keep going? And that's the other thing that I've been seeing a lot this season on Twitter is fans will be in the first quarter and a player will be like 0 for 4. Not talking about George Niang and Dean Wade, who tallied 0 for 10 last night and 0 for 8 from three-point line combined. But in the first quarter, a player will be 0 for 4. And they'll be like, oh, I'll get him off the court. He's not doing this, then he's not doing that. I'm like, do you realize if the dude makes 4 shots, he's 50% from the field? Like, there's a whole lot of game to be played. And you can't, like, and those messages, that mindset of starting early is not how you finish. I take the mindset of, and we've talked about this, Logan, a lot, playing basketball with each other in the past. I would rather be over 30 than over 10 because I will stop shooting. Like, it's a confidence thing, and we've seen that with Evan Mobley's shot growing. His shot, like me and Chris talked about this at the beginning of the season, argued about the confidence in his shot. And once you saw him come back from injury, the man has new confidence because guess what he was doing all the time when he was injured? Shooting 3-pointers. So, yeah, sorry for the tangent, but good Lord.
That's not even near the longest tangent we've had on this show. Don't you worry. Yeah.
That's a valid point, though, because if you see, like, our offense when Merrill is on the floor is like, okay, let's just get him the ball to get him to make one shot, and then okay, he sees it go through the hoop. Now we're gonna go from there. That's how he ends up with 20 points. That's how he ends up with 5, 6, 7 threes. So I think that's a great point. But staying in that same vein, since we're talking offensive rating a lot, Logan, I want to throw it back to you as far as this from Chris right here. In more than 1,200 minutes without Donovan Mitchell this season, including last night, Cavs have an offensive rating of 111, equivalent to the Detroit Pistons. Now, I know there's a lot to complain about here. Mostly just the accountability. Like great point, Ethan. Like, who's on the bench, like, getting this team ready to go? And Mitchell sounds like a pretty vocal leader, even when he's not out there, which I'm glad to hear about. It's good to see. But who on the court when stuff is going sideways in the fourth quarter, when, Josh Hart is unconscious, when Miles McBride is making, 35-foot heaves, who's settling these guys down? Like, newsflash, I know it's been a year and a half. You don't have Ricky Rubio anymore, or 2 years, however long it's been. Like, he was that guy when he was healthy and playing on this roster. Who's going to be that guy? And most importantly, who's going to be the guy or guys stepping up these next 3 games, Logan? If you had to hope, if you had to pick and choose.
Jared Allen was doing really good without Mobley, and I'm not going to get in the whole tangent of these bigs don't work together because people don't want to talk about that. And honestly, I think it's kind of a point that you can go to in any given game and kind of decide one way or the other. I think Jared Allen has to play better. He has to play big. He's got to be getting those 14, 15 rebound games again. Max Strus apparently is also hurt, is what I'm seeing on Twitter. That would have been one of my other guys I would have mentioned. I think Sam Merrill, when things weren't good, when things weren't rocking, Sam Merrill certainly was. I was at the game where he had 8 threes against Utah, and we never really looked back. But I think guys like Merrill, guys like Allen got to play better. It's easy to say Darius Garland, obviously, has to play a whole lot better. I think if people think this guy's just going to snap his fingers and turn into all-star Gar from 21-22, you're living in a fantasy world. Pause, guys. I got a fire alarm going off.
Honestly, so Merrill, I agree with. I got to go with these injuries. If Okoro and LeVert and Strus are all going to be out, I guess LeVert, it might be kind of working his way back. But if Okoro and Strus are both out, it's Garland, and I think it's got to be Craig Porter Jr. for some reason. I like his game. I think that he could, play a pivotal role with Donovan out, relieving some of the load that Darius is going to be increased. Like, yeah, Darius should be on that list 100%. But now it's even like more pressure on Darius. Maybe that'll help him get to 20, 25 shots like, Ethan is calling for, which could be a good thing in hindsight. If you have a couple people injured and you could get Darius's confidence back because of that, where I think you saw a lot of people's confidence increase when Mobley was out, when Darius was out. Even if you lose games, it might still be a win, on paper at the end of the day because you get people's confidence back.
We've seen JB get creative when we're down guys with his lineups. It was
very true.
Golden moment of coaching this year. So, yeah, I don't how I forgot his name, but CPJ is literally one of my favorite players on the Cavaliers right now. And, it's all dependent on what kind of minutes he's going to get so he can show you the impact he can get. I still think he's quite literally a top 3 most skilled player on this team. I'm not talking overall player. I'm talking skilled, like a guy that gets it, a guy that is going to give you consistent minutes both on the offense and defensive side of the court. He's one of those guys that when he's on the court, I feel good. So that's another big name. But, yeah, again, real quick, this stat, guys, we're 7-6 without Donovan Mitchell. That's, like, not horrible. But the defense was crazy. So I think it's not going to be a matter of guys stepping up offensively. It's can you get back to that identity once again where you're just locking teams down. And they haven't really lost that, but they're going to especially need it moving forward.
I think you mentioned that they haven't lost that defensive mindset, but Isaac Okoro might be out against the Celtics. He's the guy that you were going to put on Jaylen Brown, who's also questionable, or Jason Tatum. And then you look, and now you have Dean Wade, who is the second best point of attack defender on the Cavs. And you put him on Jason Tatum, you put him on Kristaps, maybe. Like, it's all about what matchups you want to see.
Matchup hell, really.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned that the creativity of the Cavs when they were hurt, it was like, all right, now we know somebody has to step up every night. They have to do it. And that's what, along with a slightly easier schedule, allowed them to kind of get on the run that they went on over the 6 weeks that Darius Garland and Evan Mobley were out. And now with Donovan Mitchell out, with Max Strus out, those are the two guys that you talk about leaders. Max Strus leads by example. Donovan Mitchell is the vocal leader of that team.
Agreed.
And
Great point.
I think you really have to get to know this team where you realize that their personalities, they really mesh well.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of guys that are willing to like talk. Jared Allen is the anchor of the defense. He talks the most on defense, but he's also a quiet personality. So it's a mix and match. You can only get so much from everybody. And as much as Jared Allen and Evan Mobley are expending on the defensive end, they cannot always give that much on the offensive end because it comes down to fatigue and minutes and getting back acclimated after the injury. I think people forget Evan Mobley had surgery. Like, the man was out for a minute for surgery. He's still getting back, still trying to figure himself out and all of those things. So I really think like this Boston game, it's all hands on deck, just like it was when they were going on these runs, because they need some people to step up. And that was the beauty of the Cavs team when they were good. On any given night, somebody was going to step up. Sam Merrill, Isaac Okoro, Max Strus, Donovan Mitchell. One of those guys, somebody, Dean Wade, George Niang, like all of those guys had standout performances at least once.
Agreed.
And it'll take one of those performances to make the contest bearable. And me and Chris talked about this yesterday. Even if the Cavaliers somehow pull out a victory against the Celtics, it doesn't matter. They're on a different tier than the Cavs are right now, to be very, very frank.
Yeah.
True. It's the Boston Celtics and everybody else in the East.
Everybody else almost in the NBA, to be honest.
Almost. So, yeah, I think you have to look at what matchups JB Bickerstaff has to work with. Like, you think, who is he going to start? Is it going to be Darius Garland? Okay, so let's do this. This will be fun. What predict the starting five? Because, oh my goodness. So let's say everybody's out. Let's say Okoro's out, Levert's out, Strus is out, Mitchell's out.
Garland, Merrill, Wade, Mobley, Allen.
Yeah.
Gotta be.
I think that's got to be it.
Unless you try and put Craig as the starter and move Darius to the 2, but that's just asking for.
They don't like playing Craig and Darius together because their gameplays are too similar,
especially against Boston. Boston's too tall too. I mean, Merrill's not a giant, but I'm so glad. It's so funny that you brought the personalities and the meshing together up, Ethan, because it was either the second or the third quarter last night. Logan, you're watching the national TV broadcast, and a text comes across my phone. He goes, I can hear the Knicks on defense. I can't hear the Cavs. That's exactly what he told me last night. So that's super interesting. Wow, the starting 5 against Boston is going to be really interesting, but let's keep that going. Let's do 2 games at a time for this 4-game stretch as far as grooving into predictions. Kind of before we wrap up here, we got the Celtics tomorrow. Then we have the Hawks in Atlanta on the back-to-back. Here's my thing.
Back-to-backs. I'm so sick of all these 4 games.
Back-to-back, second game on the
road too. This man's going everywhere.
I don't have us. I'll start. I don't have us winning either of these games. I think Boston wins tomorrow. I think Atlanta, unfortunately, is probably the second easiest game on the stretch. I think Brooklyn we play a little bit better, but I have Atlanta. If this Atlanta game wasn't a back-to-back, I'd pick us to win, but I have to go with the Celtics and the Hawks for these first 2 games. Logan, do you agree or disagree?
God, you know what? It would make so much sense after having the worst loss of the year for this Cavaliers team to beat Boston. That's the way this season has been going.
You know they're going to win.
The games I think we have no shot in, we're going to pull off. The games we should absolutely pull out. So, Ethan, for just so you have a little, just to know kind of what's been going on the last couple of years here. I've won the predictions battle the last 2 seasons fairly convincing. Last year's a little bit closer.
I'm not surprised.
But this year I started 0-6. 0-6.
Oh.
I got the first 6 games wrong. I felt
Still
like
win it though. There's a lot of daylight left.
Yeah, I've gotten myself back in shape, but even now, every time we do predictions, I just hate doing it because I'll always end up saying the wrong freaking thing. Like I'll have my gut feeling and then say the opposite. So
it's like betting. You can have everything set up and just somebody's gonna mess up the parlay. I don't even bet. That's just a reference.
I shouldn't get into. I'm moving back to Ohio in a month. I probably shouldn't get into sports betting. It's probably going to take me down a bad hole. But I'm going to say this Boston game. I'm going to make a weird prediction and say we lose, but it's not because of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I'm going to say a guy like Derek White is going to have like a Dante DiVincenzo night. I'm going to say a guy like Kristaps Porzingis is going to hurt us. I think we're going to have the advantage inside tomorrow. I don't think Porzingis, as much of a shot blocker as he is, he's a little bit weaker, but I do think the Cavaliers, if they can expose the interior, they got a shot tomorrow. I think the Cavaliers are going to give me hope until the final 5 minutes, and then they're not going to play Sam Merrill for the last 4:55. So I'm going to go Boston. And that Hawks game, like you said, Jeffrey, it's that back-to-back which really bugs me. But I think it's probably the most winnable game of the week, and I hate to just say we're going to lose all these games. So I'm going to give us a win in Atlanta. I don't think it's going to come easy. A lot of things are going to have to go right. Guys are going to have to step up.
Fair enough. Ethan, thoughts?
Fun. So listen, Kristaps is questionable for tomorrow's game.
All right.
I like what you had to say about Jared Allen, Evan Mobley stepping up, but I'm gonna be so real with you guys.
We want you to be real. Yeah.
Like I was trying to have this conversation with somebody the other day. You look at the Bucks team that won the championship. Okay. Drew Holiday was on that team and played a major factor in that.
Sure.
Boston Celtics, probably the best team since the Golden State Warriors when they went on that 73-win season. Drew Holiday's on this team. I think you look at the matchups like we were talking about, Drew Holiday is going to have Darius Garland in purgatory. Like, it is going – like, the other thing that I noticed with Darius Garland is he gets a little uncomfortable when somebody guards him the length of the floor because he's not used to somebody being in the backcourt with him. So, and I know Drew Holiday is just going to be bullying him. Like on, and it's not to say like Darius Garland's ball handling is phenomenal. We've seen him have some step back threes as of late. That's been great. But Drew Holiday is a different level of defender, and he makes a different level of impact. And then you have Derek White, who. So you're gonna tell me you're gonna set a screen, and you're the next defender you have
Derek White,
Derek White, Jason Tatum, or Jaylen Brown.
Switch everything.
That's horrible. That's like, and I understand there's gonna be a mismatch inside again, but Jared Allen and Evan Mobley haven't proved to me this season that they can take advantage of mismatches as of yet. I want it to happen. I want it to happen so bad for those guys. I enjoy covering those guys. They're a very nice brand of people, but I got the Celtics in that game. And my impact player, we're going that way, is Drew Holiday. And I'm going to say I'm going to the Atlanta game. So I hope they're going to have Isaac back because
he likes playing at home. That's his home.
That's his home, and you need somebody to be able to guard either DeJounte Murray or Trae Young. You can't have both of them hurting you at the same time. Trae Young's hurt, so don't have to worry about him for a little bit. But so that's even more of a point. If you have to guard DeJounte Murray, if you can shut down DeJounte Murray with Isaac Okoro, that leads to everybody else having opportunities on the offensive end. So I give it to the Cavs against the Hawks. I'm gonna go with what Logan said. I think they're able to pull it out. I just don't think I think the Cavs can match them offensively, but I just don't think the Hawks are better than them defensively to keep up. So that's where I leave it at. But oh my goodness, then you tell me you got to face off against the Timberwolves at home on Friday.
We ain't
Good
winning
Lord.
Minnesota. I'm just gonna make my point short. We're just not gonna beat Minnesota. We're not equipped right now.
Are we gonna beat
had
the
our
Nets,
guys?
though?
Probably.
Are we gonna beat the Nets? It depends on if I'm saying Dean Wade's guarding Cam Thomas and somebody, and then if Isaac's available, is gonna guard Mikal Bridges. So, I'm not worried about. I'm not worried about
Right.
Ben Simmons.
Honestly, the first 2 games, though, I'm kind of taking your line of thinking, Logan, but just using that against us in the second game. Like, could Boston very well blow us out? Absolutely. But is it far fetched that game will be close and we'll play like hard minutes in the fourth and still
Yes,
lose, and then
it's
we'll have to
far-fetched.
turn around and play at Atlanta the next day with no help. Like maybe you have a Corin Streets back for Atlanta, but you're not going to have Don. Like you're going to have Merrill's going to be playing a ton of minutes. Wade's going to be playing a ton of minutes, and then you got to turn around, fly to Atlanta, and play. I agree with you, Logan. I don't think we beat the T-Wolves. I'm giving us a 1-3 week. We beat the Nets.
I will take us over the Nets, leaving me a 2-2 week. That would honestly be a win, to be quite frank.
That'd be a huge win.
That would be a huge win. That'd be a huge win.
Absolutely, huge win.
Man, I think. Oh man, I hate to be negative, dog. I hate to be negative. Like, and I said we were gonna beat the Hawks. I think we lose one of the games that we're supposed to win against the Hawks or the Nets. That's
that
just frankly how I see it. And I don't see us going 2-2 on the week. So I guess I'm gonna say they lose to the Nets if I'm gonna give them the Hawks game. I'm not confident in
close
that
games with Brooklyn this year.
Yeah, and I mean I think they've won all their matchups so far.
Yeah,
including the Paris game.
Yep.
But
it's almost blew.
I just it feels like, man, I want to take back my vote now.
How it goes.
Man.
That's how it goes. But honestly,
Stick with it.
interesting. All 3 different outcomes this week. Winding down here, Logan, anything else you got to get off your chest? And then we'll throw it over to Ethan, who's been a great guest. Appreciate you coming on, and we'll wrap up for this episode.
Listen, fans are allowed to be negative. To me, I find that the most negative fans are the fans.
Critical.
Yes, fans are allowed
Negative
to be critical.
comes with critical, but come on, we got to be able to criticize the squad.
You can be critical, and in fact, I think the most critical fans are the ones who care about this team the most, that love this team the most because they want to see them succeed because they're better than this. The Cavaliers are better than this. And I think they got to refocus. JB has to take a long look in the mirror and actually figure out what's going to work over these next couple of weeks and commit to it. He's got to have shorter leashes on players. If they're not doing their job like George Niang did last night in New York, honestly, he would have saved Niang a whole lot of crap from the Cleveland Twitterverse over the last 24 hours if he had just pulled him when he was playing bad. He kept him out there, even brought in Isaac Okoro and Jarrett Allen. I said, surely they're taking him off for Niang. No, Niang's out for a couple more minutes and did more crap. So I love George Niang. I love him as a teammate. I love him as a player, a personality, all of that for the locker room. Last night wasn't his night. That's one of the instances where I'll say it just wasn't his night. But I just think these sorry, Jeffrey and I have an inside joke with that.
You're good.
I just think you're allowed to be negative. And I do agree that the what's it called? What's the phrase where it's like the disrespect or no, the apology better be as loud as the disrespect. I'm about to get a fire alarm thing. Just go to Ethan.
Ethan?
So listen, I mean, I just need to see more grit, more toughness from this Cavs team. And I talked about this again with Chris yesterday's podcast about Josh Hart banging the 3 in the corner and then going over and popping Donovan Mitchell's chain as he ran down the court.
What would you have done, Ethan? What would you have done?
I talked to Chris about this and I said, you don't want a physical interaction because one, clearly Donovan Mitchell wasn't at full health, so that wouldn't have been productive. But I'm either like giving him like a finger wag or like a death stare. Or like
I'm not shaking hands with him after the game. I'll tell you that much. I'm not meeting at mid-court and saying good game.
You know that they're friends and you know they have a good relationship. And Josh Hart is a goofy guy if you've watched their podcast. But I mean, it just in a level of competitiveness. Like, I know Kobe Bryant wouldn't have done that. I know, like, there have been guys like what Tom Brady said. Like, if he if you could have been friends off the court or off the field, but once you step between those lines, we cannot be friends for these 48
Yep.
minutes. Like, so I didn't like that interaction, and it kind of showed how the Cavs can get punked. And I just want the Cavs to have some backbone, like when situations happen, and we've seen them do that this year. Donovan Mitchell has pushed back at Dylan Brooks. Donovan Mitchell has pushed back at other players. Like, I don't think you can give exceptions for people that you're friends with. Like, cool. Y'all have great relationships. We don't want people in the NBA to hate each other. But in certain situations, bro, stuff can't fly. Like I saw on the Twitterverse, on NBA Twitter, people were talking about walk into your trap and take over your trap. Like, that is insane. It's in your house. Like, they would not have let you done that at Madison Square Garden.
No.
And the thing that made me probably irritated the most is, like, you can't, like, Donovan probably couldn't have done anything because they're friends, right? Cool. George Niang saw it happen. George Niang is outside of Max Strus, is one of the, like, screamiest players at refs.
He was looking right at it. LeVert was looking right at it.
Well, I don't know if LeVert saw it. I think LeVert was zoned out because everything going on. But I know Niang saw it, and Niang didn't say anything. And I was like, you of all people, I felt like would have said something. But anyway, moving back to just wrapping this up, I think the Cavs are a good team, right? And we talk about critiquing and being critical, and you can't cover a team without being able to tell both sides of the story. When they're great, we're going to tell you they're being great. When they're bad, we're going to tell you they're going to be that they're playing bad. Like,
it's part of the gig.
You can't be a fan. We're not fans. Like, this is job. This is a work thing. Like, I apologize for being frank on some things, but that's how the world works. I don't get paid to sugarcoat it. If I wrote for the Cavs, maybe I'd sugarcoat things differently, but I don't.
Sure.
So it's you just need to be able to recognize the different areas where they can grow. This is not us saying that this team is bad and that they can't succeed and all of these things. This is me telling you what I believe the Cavs need to do to be able to reach their goal, which I still don't even like that this is their goal, but just to get to the second round. Why is the Miami Heat like 6th seed, 7th seed, 8th seed, 9th seed? I don't care. We're going to make it to the NBA Finals.
Right.
But the Cavs are like, if we make it to the second round, we're good, man.
Right. Another year.
Yeah. Like, and they're like, we'll keep Donovan Mitchell if, like, no, like, Donovan Mitchell is, first of all, let me say this. Donovan Mitchell enjoys being in Cleveland. He enjoys playing with the Cavs. He enjoys all of these things. Winning keeps players.
Right.
And so to wrap this up into a nice little bow, I think the Cavs are going to struggle in March just based on the schedule. Before the injuries happened, they were going to struggle. Now it's going to reiterate who this team is. We got to see the players step up when they had other injuries against lower than 500 teams. Now you get to see that against teams that are playoff contenders and want to be in the same ranks as you. So basically, are you willing to step up in the time where you said that you're competing against the teams that look like you? Or are you going to roll over and again show that you're not on the same tier, even though you've been begging for national television and national attention?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, great episode. Shout out to Ethan for coming on. Cavs Encapsulated crew, Cavs faithful. As always, make sure you're hitting that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're commenting down below. What did you think of this episode? What did you think of the Josh Hart antics?
Check out Ethan and Chris's podcast. Can you say it one more time, Ethan?
The Wine
Check
and
'em out.
Gold Talk podcast. I actually got to get off here and go record that one for tomorrow. So
Links are going to be in the description. We'll throw his Twitter down there. Make sure you go check out Ethan, behind the scenes in the locker room, front row seats as far as Cavs Insider. Once again, we appreciate you having you being on with us. And we'll talk, I'm sure, more in the future. But with that all being said, we appreciate you guys being the pulse of it all. Peace.